Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Punisher War Journal number 9, cover dated October 1989. The cover is by Jim Lee, penciled and inked by Jim. I would say these colors are by Greg Wright, who is the interior colorist. This is a really striking, unusual and interesting cover by Jim Lee. This is nothing like you'd ever see from him again after this. He's got a literal Black Widow there, with a face popping out at the other end of the spider, and it is attacking the Punisher there, and it's an interesting angle on the Punisher where we've got this upshot of his body and his face there is in deep shadow. Very, very interesting stuff, and very clearly photo referenced in respect of that Black Widow spider. A very visually interesting and eye-catching cover. Let's open it up to the first page, and we've got a beautiful splash page here by Jim Lee, and we can see there in the credits on the left that the story is credited to Carl Potts, Jim Lee art, so that means that he is penciling and inking his own art. Gregory Wright on colors. There you go. So that is quite the splash page. Very much the case that Jim Lee is enjoying himself drawing Natasha Romanoff there, and he's very much riffing on his youthful enthusiasm for Frank Miller's version of Natasha, of the Black Widow, using the screen tone there that Miller and Klaus Janson used for her costume. And it's a dynamic pose, obviously, as well, as we have this top-down angle on her. We've got a three-point perspective here over Upper West Side Manhattan. And yeah, I like the coloring here, of course, by Greg Wright as well. The lighting coming up from the streets and the rooftops that bit darker, which helps Black Widow to pop here in the foreground. Something else to note as well is that this issue comes directly after Jim Lee's first issue of X-Men. So Uncanny X-Men number 248 came out, cover dated September 1989. It was released in May, I think, of May-June 1989, and this came out a month afterwards. So Jim Lee just having drawn the superheroes that are the X-Men, and this really is his first superheroic female figure in Punisher War Journal. So definitely drawing on the experience he got drawing Storm, for example, in 248. Now, I do think that Jim Lee spent a lot of time on the art for Uncanny X-Men 248. And of course, why not? Because he knew that he was putting his artwork into a comic that was the top-selling one at Marvel at the time, and that it was really a way to promote his work. So he spent a lot of time on that. And I think after the first few pages of this issue, I feel he's taking some shortcuts with the art. Maybe it's a little bit rushed here and there in certain places. But then he makes up for that again with the very next issue, which is number 10. There's already a review of that on the channel. And number 10 of Punisher War Journal was an issue that he himself said in 1991 that he was incredibly proud of the art job that he did. But this page is an interesting page here. So Natasha has been sent by Matt Murdock, Daredevil, to keep an eye on the building that the Punisher has been living in Upper West Side, New York. And en route, she overhears an attack through the apartment skylight here on a middle-aged woman. So she decides to get involved. This neighborhood's about as nice as Matt's old stomping grounds, which are in Hell's Kitchen. So she swings down and takes out these thugs. Now, that's a nicely designed page there. I like the high vertical establishing shot of Natasha clinging onto the edge of this apartment building and looking down towards other buildings in the Upper West Side, with the smokestack here as well. So Jim Lee having some fun there with the different techniques he's using for inking. He's cutting in white media here to indicate the lights on some of these skyscraper buildings as well. And you can see it very clearly here in this top horizontal panel as well, where he's cutting in either white paint or scraping away the ink here for those lighting effects on the skyscrapers. Nice anchor image here of Natasha punching out this anonymous goon, using her widow stings as well on her wristbands and dodging those bullets, taking out this guy's gun here as well. So very nice, smooth storytelling by Jim Lee in this issue, but you can see the art getting that little bit rougher on page 4 already. The background is not so detailed in its delineation. There's a little bit of detail lost in Natasha's face there. It's the same with this particular character, Yuriko. So she's got samurai ninja skills, and she's battling these these robots that are manned by, as it turns out, we'll turn the page. This is picking up from an episode at the end of the previous issue, clones of her own father. So there she is. She's shocked at that. But you can see that Lee is probably inking this a little bit quickly. You know, this isn't the smooth and carefully cross-hatched style that he comes to with when partnered with Scott Williams on the inks. This is a very different, rougher edged Jim Lee in these pages in Punisher War Journal number 9. You can see it here in particular on this page again. There's a little bit of vagueness in the delineation of the different characters here. It's in this issue, I've reviewed the previous 3 issues. It's only in this issue does it actually become clear that this family who are living in the apartment building that the Punisher's been living in on the Upper West Side of Manhattan are actually Japanese. It was not made clear in issues, in the previous 3 issues. I was wondering exactly what their backstory is, and I'll lay the blame for that on Carl Potts, but also the fact that we're in the Tom DeFalco era and we've moved on from Jim Shooter's editorial-in-chief dictate that every issue might be some readers first. In which case, in the Jim Shooter era, you're never lost as a reader in terms of who is in the comic, what their powers are, what their names are, and so on and so forth. Anyway, nice bottom panel here with the explosion caused by another one of these clone-operated robot suits. So nice little action scene there. That's Central Park. That's the boundary wall of Central Park there. So we're in Midtown Manhattan. The fight is moving away from the west side into the park. This is a nice page in terms of the storytelling, and I do think, and also in particular this page, and on this page I see a couple of influences in terms of the way that Jim Lee is drawing the tech, and I see the influence of Frank Miller in Dark Knight Returns and Bruce Wayne Batman's tech suit that he uses to take on Superman at the end in issue number 4 or part 4 of Dark Knight Returns. And I also see some manga influence. Jim Lee is on record as saying that he admires and was influenced by the work of Masamune Shirow. So that's the author of the likes of Appleseed and the what's it called again? The well, Appleseed in any case. The other one is escaping my mind. Is it the something in the Shell? I can't remember it just as I'm making the video, but Masamune Shirow, anyway, he's on record as admiring him, and I see some Masamune Shirow influence in terms of the design of the robot suit here, operated by this clone. So this is supposed to be a Punisher comic, and this is his first appearance on page 9, which is a good ways into the issue. Punisher doesn't really appear very much in this particular issue. There he is in his van, and the van has all of these defense mechanisms, including this rooftop mounted machine gun, but this robot punches right in through the front windshield. Punisher dodges it, of course, and then what happens? Again, this page really reminds me of aspects of Frank Miller on Dark Knight Return. Like, just look at that image here of the clone of her father again with the helmet popped off. Does not that look like Bruce Wayne in part 4 of Dark Knight Returns? I'm so certain that he's referencing that, as well as I said, Ghost in the Shell. Masamune Shirow's other manga is Ghost in the Shell. That's the one I was thinking of. But this is a nice page here in terms of Lee's art. I like the storytelling here, as the robot is, or the battle suit is shot to pieces here by the Punisher's rooftop mounted armor piercing gun. And then, as I said, like, this is Yuriko's father, but it's a clone of the father. And now we get an explanation as regards that. And this is an interesting layout by Jim Lee here, where he split the face of the father and the daughter here across these 4 panels. And it's not exactly the case that the father's face is entirely behind this second panel, or is it? Maybe it is actually. Maybe that's what he does mean it to be. But it's a weird effect anyway, having father and daughter blend there in the 4 vertical panels. It's Jim Lee experimenting like we wouldn't see him experiment in subsequent years. Like he is playing around with the craft skills that he's still acquiring at this point in his career. So her friends arrive back from the park. Punisher gets out of the van there, and then the van explodes. So another great image of that. The Punisher is hit by some shrapnel from the exploding van. These battlesuit clone types are still attacking the family here and friends. And this particular guy uses his weird mystical powers to tap into and revive the unconscious Punisher and Yuriko. So here we see an interesting kind of psychic sequence where we have Punisher's most traumatic moment, the family picnic in Central Park that resulted in the death of his wife, daughter and son. And then here in parallel on the other side of the page, an important element of the origin story in relation to Yuriko happening in Japan there. And interesting techniques used by Jim Lee in the inking here. He's definitely using a thick brush. And so some interesting effects. He's experimenting there in a way that he wouldn't do again until it came to his death blow title at Image. So again, we have in parallel the 2 different origin stories. Frank there in Happier Times flying that kite in the park. The brother and sister there training in the rare arts of the ninja. And then the moment of trauma. Death by violence in both cases. And then a hunger and a thirst for violent vengeance in both cases. So we see the stories in parallel there. And again, just look at the art. Interesting combination of Lee's more abstract style here. In particular on this page, he's getting very abstract. I imagine he's taking a look at the likes of Bill Sienkiewicz when he is inking this particular page. It's got that Bill Sienkiewicz scratchy energy and style. I'd say he had fun doing this, but it might be that readers of the comic, depending on how young they were, might have felt that this art was a bit rougher than they would prefer. But I like it now as an adult looking back. I can see him experimenting. I see what he's going for here with the ink on the page. So now we get to the end of this psychic sequence, and you can see that the art is becoming even more abstract here on the Punisher's side, more menacing there in terms of the Punisher turning into pure silhouette, pure shadow, just with that logo there on his chest and torso. And then Yuriko falling into tormented helplessness, into a pit of tormented helplessness. Again, the image of her father there. And again, looking a little bit like Bruce Wayne, Batman in Chapter 4 of Dark Knight Returns. So now, Black Widow finally happens on the scene. She was told to keep an eye on the building and the family there by Daredevil. So she happens on the scene. She's observing and thinking about whether she should risk getting involved. No telling who, if anyone, are the good guys. But I did promise Matt, she thinks to herself, what to do. I'll wait and see. The old man's gone back into his stupor. So he looks directly at her. He's aware of her. And then he's back into this psychic space where the Punisher and Yuriko combine together. They team up in the psychic space to fight their various nemeses, and by combining together they succeed. So they will need, what is it, let's see, so one giant menace, overpowering, attacks both of them, unstoppable by insufficient skill, unbeatable by insufficient force. They will need help to save themselves. Very dark, the art on this particular page. And again, it's Lee inking with a brush. an ink brush on these pages. Here again we see more of that ink brush inking and also cutting in white paint or white media here. He's using a lot of different techniques on these pages, inking techniques, as I said, that he doesn't otherwise or ordinarily do so. So then we have a symbolic representation of the Black Widow attacking the battlesuit clone of Yuriko's father, and that helps Punisher and Yuriko. Again, it's all happening in the psychic space, and then outside in reality they wake up, the pair of them. So Yuriko tells him, quickly, you must get up, help me with Rikichi. So Punisher helps out, but we have another one of these battle-suited cyborgs. They seem to be endless. And Punisher here, like, this is interesting. We've got a silent panel of Black Widow watching, and she says to Punisher, what are you doing? What is it? What is that you picked up? Actually, the storytelling here is a little bit unclear. Is it Black Widow that's saying that? Or is it Yuriko? My guess now is that it's Yuriko saying an impact grenade from the van. So she protests and she says, wait, let me. You are in no condition. So it's her trauma regarding her father that she is purging here. Punisher gives her the impact grenade. She says, we've no time, you must trust me. So he does, but he doesn't say anything. This is Punisher War Journal. We could have some insight into what he's thinking to himself in the War Journal, but Carl Potts has made a decision, I think it's a good one, to keep the journal out of it for this issue. So here is Yuriko. Interesting color hold here as the clone in the battlesuit targets her, and she says, got me in your sights, now you don't. She hops away. We've got a nice DeLuca effect here of Yuriko leaping around the wake of the battle-suited cyborg and throwing the impact grenade towards his thruster boots. And it pops into an exhaust vent and explodes the battlesuit entirely. And that's it. A tremendous crash. And then no words between Yuriko and Punisher, but she's happy now. And that seems to be the end of them. It seems to be that way. But one of them says, wait, that noise again. What is that? So Punisher's there ready with his gun in deep silhouette. He's saying nothing, notice. That's interesting. And who is it? It is the Black Widow who's been watching. And Punisher is prepared to shoot, but he recognizes, no, it's an ally. So there was another cyborg in a battlesuit there in hiding, came out of the park, and Black Widow deals with that one with her Widow Sting. Good storytelling on this page in the 6 panels. Nicely done. And that's the end of that particular cyborg, and or not cyborg, but clone in the battlesuit. Interesting panel there. No border, but a little bit of screen tone there for shadows. Everyone in silhouette. That's nicely done. Then we've got the family and friends there thanking Punisher, but he says nothing. He hasn't said a word. And Natasha makes the point to him, don't you know how to say thanks? And he turns to her and he says, I recognize you now. You hang out with Daredevil, the Crimson Wimp of Hell's Kitchen. Wow. Natasha says, you're just as charming as I've heard. I hear police sirens on the way. Best make yourself scarce, big boy, as she swings away. That's a nice concluding panel again. No borders on it. And Punisher finally makes a point here via his journal. It's going to be difficult to find a cab in this neighborhood. And all of this was, this story, which, like, it didn't feature the Punisher front and center, was a setup for this Shadow Masters Bookshelf Limited series by Carl Potts. So that's why the Punisher isn't really featuring front and center in this issue. Look, I'll be honest with you. Would I have any interest in hunting down this Shadow Masters Bookshelf Limited series? No, I would not. Punisher's Arsenal by Elliot Orr Brown. What's all this about? Let's see. What is going on here? On my stripped down blotter is a Vietnam era Colt XM 177EI. It was an experimental improvement of the Car 15 and really helped that gun's excessive recoil and muzzle blast. Okay, who is going to understand any of this except for somebody who has a deep interest in this kind of weaponry? But one thing you can say is that Elliot Orr Brown's renderings of these pieces of tech, equipment, weaponry, super exact in relation to the detail on these things. Really great delineation of these objects by Elliot Orr Brown. So there you go, Punisher Armory, letters page there. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on the Punisher War Journal number 9. Some very interesting inking by Jim Lee on his own pencils. Not very focused on the Punisher, but a very nice version of Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow. If you liked the video, please like it on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.